Good evening, everyone. Happy International Men's Day. Welcome to another HumEd Talk. This is a special edition for International Men's Day, HumEd Men's Talk.
I am Nicaro Cook,
And I'm Celine Goodchild,
and we'll be
and we're
your
your
host for
hosts
this
for
evening. The title of our talk this evening is What Men Want, but we're taking a totally different route from that of the movie. We're here to discuss some of the issues affecting men, especially in the Caribbean society. We have some very special guests with us this evening.
We have Mr. Joseph Sangster Smith, a second year international relations student and chairman of the Chancellor Hall Current Affairs Club and vice president of projects for Faculty of Social Sciences.
We have Kemar Grant, a second year linguistics and communication student and events officer for the Faculty of Humanities and Education at the UWI Cave Hill campus.
And Giovanni Lewin, a first year journalism student and administrative assistant for the Faculty of Humanities and Education Publications Committee at UWI-MUNA.
We also have Jovain Brown, a third year law student and UWI coordinator of partnerships and regional collaboration at UWI-MUNA.
And we have Ronaldo Burke, a first year integrated marketing and communication student and PRO for UWI Western Jamaica Campus Humanities and Education.
We also have Zandria Stennett, a second year animation student and public relations officer for the Faculty of Humanities and Education, UWI-MUNA.
And Miss Savannah McDonald, second year integrated marketing communication student student and or external affairs chairwoman for the Faculty of Humanities and Education at UMUNA.
The theme for International Men's Day 2020 is Better Health for Men and Boys. A November 2019 Jamaica article entitled New Report Proposes Recommendations to Improve the Lives of Men in the Caribbean stated that according to Pan American Health Organization PAHO, the life expectancy for men in the Caribbean is 5.8 years below that of women, partly because societal expectations contribute to these risk-bearing behaviors. The report, titled Masculinities and Health in the Region of the Americas, was launched on the eve of International Men's Day last year. The report notes that societal expectations of men to be providers, to engage in risk seeking behaviors, to be sexually dominant and avoid discussing their emotions or seeking help, behaviors commonly referred to as toxic masculinity, are contributing to higher rates of suicide, homicide, addictions, and road traffic accidents, as well as chronic non communicable diseases among men. According to that report, the gender roles, norms, and practices of socially imposed on men reinforce a lack of self-care and neglect of their own physical and mental health.
And so, our panelists. Good evening, everyone. How are you doing this evening?
Good evening, good evening.
Good
Good
evening.
evening.
Good
All
evening, everyone.
right.
Good evening. Good evening, everyone.
So, our first question for this evening: what are your views on male health issues in the Caribbean?
We can take a response from Zandria.
Hi, good evening, everybody. My views on male health in the Caribbean, and this is my opinion purely. Based on my personal experience, I have gathered that a lot of men, they don't tend to be very stringent as it relates to their health. And so they only usually might take the time out to be deliberate about their health practices whenever they encounter some extreme health challenges. And that is usually due to a perception that men should be, I guess, more tough and should be able to bear and withstand certain things that might come against their physical health. So you tend to see a reluctance in doing stuff like regular checkups, visiting the doctors, etc. And that might contribute in the long run to health problems that they might face.
Yeah, I agree with you. Um, Javane,
All right, so again, this is my opinion. So, from what I've seen, especially in the Caribbean and Jamaican men, we don't place particular stock on our health, particularly our mental health, because Jamaicans tend to think that showing emotions as well as crying and speaking to others is something being unmasculine. So, or physical health. Sometimes men do tend to care about their physical health in terms of how they would exercise, how they carry themselves, what they eat. But more often than not, Jamaican men and Caribbean men, I can just say black men in general, don't necessarily cater to their mental health as much because we think of it as something insignificant and not, you know, of importance. Even with our physical health, there are instances where, because of substance abuse, because black men have a higher level of alcohol abuse, higher level of substance abuse, such as marijuana and such, us, we don't usually tend to pay enough attention to our health. So I think that's something we need to go back to the drawing board and discuss more.
All right. So our next question is, well, I believe that you guys already answered this one. So what do you believe are some of the ways in which we can improve the health of men and boys in the Caribbean? So moving on, according to the World Health Organization, mental health is a state of well-being in which an individual realizes his or her own abilities can cope with normal stresses of life and can work productively and is able to make contribution to his or her community. Mental health is more than the absence of mental disorders. So, do you believe that males in the Caribbean generally take care of their mental health? And in what ways do you believe that mental health specifically can be improved among the Caribbean male population?
Giovanni, what do you think about that?
Let me first apologize for my camera not being on. My laptop decided to crash right before. But see with me. So when it comes on to mental health, I'm very particular about it. For men in general, we have already seen where people give this very oversimplified impression that man for suck it up. Basically, in the Jamaican tongue, we for suck it up. We're not supposed to display emotions. Um we're not supposed to have feelings. If you show too much feelings, them say you're gay. If you show too much feelings, them say you're girly, and that's just not it. When it comes on to mental health, we don't take into consideration the fact that males already have to deal with that barrier of not being able to express themselves, and then trying to diagnose and treat mental health in men, it gets even more complicated following all of that. So mental health for us as men, I think, is very difficult to deal with.
Okay, Kemar, what do you think about this?
Just to jump in on what he was saying, yeah, I agree with his comment. Mental health thing, as mental health as it relates to men, we aren't really, we aren't allowed to be that vulnerable. We aren't really allowed to discuss it. We are often, like Simon he was saying, if we, you can't be soft. Um, as soon as you're too soft, it comes across as a bit too feminine. You're not masculine enough. When it really truly mental health affects everyone. And it's a situation, something that we need to talk about. The conversation needs to start about it so we can get, because men need help the same way that women need help and just go through the various issues. We need help also. So just about having the conversation, having that open dialogue, that we're able to move past the whole stigma relating to male mental health.
So, in what ways do you believe mental health specifically can be improved among the Caribbean male population? Um, Mr. Sangster?
Pardon me, didn't hear that question not too long ago.
In what ways do you believe mental health specifically can be improved among the Caribbean male population?
I mean, in my opinion, and first of all, good evening to everyone, pleasant evening, everyone. So, I mean, mental health is critical, mindset is everything. I mean, if you look at most of your situations, your circumstances, in a bad light, then you're giving off negative energy, you're going to receive negative energy. So for me, I mean, mental health is of optimum priority because I mean, especially for men, the first three letters of mental is MEN, men, mental health. That is critical, that is important. So very important, like I mentioned before. Mindset is everything. It's all about how you view life. And I mean, yeah, that's just my take on the matter.
Ronaldo.
All right, good evening, everyone. So, in regards to ways in which we can go about improving the health of men and boys in the Caribbean, I believe that firstly, we need to go ahead and start as men being able to go ahead and freely speak about our mental health. So do not be afraid. Yes, they go ahead and they say that we are men, we should know how to go ahead and handle certain things, we should have emotional control and all of that good stuff. However, if you find yourself in a situation where your mental health is not where you think it should be, do not be afraid to go ahead and speak to someone about it. Also, keep in touch with who you are. A lot of times, because we have those little stereotypes that are there, we go ahead and we believe that we need to go ahead and follow that rule book that was set before us. However, sometimes we just need to go ahead and just sit down and ask ourselves as a man, who am I? What makes me different from everyone else? And what do I want to go ahead and accomplish? Once we go ahead and we understand who we are, then I believe that we will be better able to manage our mental health as men.
It's quite interesting that you said that. Savannah, could you weigh in on this for me, please?
All right, so good evening again, everyone. So I definitely agree with, all the wonderful perspectives that I'm hearing, especially the last one. I definitely believe that a lot of men place themselves in a box due to, societal expectations of men to, they might be going through some type of psychological battle and they want to be expressive, but something deep within them is just preventing them from being, expressive and venting because they're afraid that they're going to look weak or look vulnerable. But honestly, it takes a really strong person to go against what society is actually saying that you should do or what society dictates. It doesn't make you a weak person to be expressive about your mental health because at the end of the day, a lot of these issues that men seemingly do not deal with as effectively as a woman would deal with. A lot of these issues, they're just humanistic issues. Society shouldn't say, oh, a man shouldn't express himself in this way just solely because they're a man. We're all human here, so it's a humanistic approach. In terms of what we can do, I'm not sure which one of the panelists here had said it, but I do believe that we need to have more open conversations about male mental health. Encourage your friends, your brother, your nephew, your uncle, whoever it is in your life, encourage them to be more expressive and tell you what exactly is happening. The more we encourage persons to do this, the more we normalize it, and the more we normalize it, the more they'll feel comfortable to go against societal expectations. So that's my take.
Thank you so
All
much for that.
right. So thank you, Savannah. Actually, much of what you described, with the issue of not speaking up about mental health and so on, as mentioned earlier, one of the problems, one of the major reasons why male health is such an issue, is because of male toxic masculinity. All right, so toxic masculinity, according to a Gleaner article published in February this year, it describes a form of aggressive or violent behavior that results when a culture or society accepts certain behavioral traits as being manly and come to expect this behavioral reality as the standard definition of what it means to be a man in this society. So I want to hear your views on toxic masculinity, Savannah.
All right, thank you. I'm really happy that this was asked because toxic masculinity is a really a really huge societal ill happening right now. toxic masculinity is not just damaging for the individual, but everybody around them. Toxic masculinity births so many problems today: gender-based violence, misogyny, things like that. It really, for me, comes down to an identity crisis and who you think you are. So a lot of persons, they don't know who they are, so they just tend to do what society says they're supposed to do, and then they find that they lose themselves along the way, or they don't find themselves at all along the way, because when they're looking for an outlet to express themselves or to speak about certain issues, they don't do it in a very healthy way. They become aggressive, and then they don't have any emotional intelligence, and they don't know how to treat other persons. So it's extremely harmful for both the individual and everybody around them. So that's my take.
All right, and I see Zandria has her hand up. Go ahead, Zandria.
Yeah, I definitely agree with Savannah on how deeply entrenched masculinity is, especially in Caribbean societies. It's also very complex and internalized a lot of the times. A lot of the times, men, aren't aware that the behaviors that they are displaying are in fact toxic behaviors. But I think another important thing that we must also address when we are talking about toxic masculinity is in fact toxic femininity, and how a lot of the times toxic femininity and toxic masculinity, they have a dialectic relationship. And so that just really adds to the complexity of the matter. And it is our duty then to understand this and to charge ourselves with the task of learning more about it and deciding how we will start to dismantle these structures that are very present but also very inhibiting to us.
Right. All right, Jovine, go ahead.
All right, so I'm particularly glad to get that question, considering that I'm a resident of Chancellor. The continuous portrait of Chancellor is that full of bugger toxic masculinity. So, in all honesty, what I view toxic masculinity is what society portrays men to be. Society portrays men, the ideal man to be womanizing, the ideal man to be rough and tough, and to have no feminine characteristics, and to be an aggressor, to be the provider, and what is expected of society is that you should be this person, and that's what you should portray. Like to say first and foremost that masculinity is not only what society is portrayed as, but masculinity means what you want to portray your masculinity as. So whether you think that your masculinity means being somebody who empowers others, whether you think your masculinity means somebody who is a role model for others, whether you think that this is what you want to do with your life. So I think toxic masculinity has a lot to do with what society portrays as masculinity and what is expected of males, because males are expected to be the aggressor, the rough and tough person, the person who never cries, the person who never shows emotions, and the person who is a womanizer, has a bag of woman, is rough to him and anytime she disrespects him. But it's important to note that we as men have a duty to, I guess, change the societal norm and to redefine what masculinity is.
All right, Giovanni.
I know a lot of people were waiting on this particular question because toxic masculinity has moved from a more academic association of what we've been talking about to this weird normative that people use in their language to address certain things that um, common males will do. And I want everyone, especially because we're highlighting the fact that male mental health is important, stop boxing every male, every boy, every guy who does one thing wrong and assign toxic masculinity to him, right? Toxic masculinity is something that is acquired because of societal norms, as we've all said already. It's sociocultural. It's something that is imposed upon us because of how the society has formed it. It's machismo. So basically it's over manliness. It gives the impression traits like you have to be socially dominant. You have to be, and it promotes certain things like the rape culture and stuff like that.
And this is why toxic masculinity is so bad. And I believe how we need to address it is all the ways we've addressed all the other things that men have to experience already. I think it was Jovain and the other chancellor man who said that if there is a space for us to talk about certain things, then we wouldn't have to resort to playing into the societal normative, right? And I think that's how we address toxic masculinity, making it known at first that, hey, these traits aren't things that we can be okay with. It's not okay. And we know it's not your fault that you think that it's okay because these people, this certain like lifestyle has been imposed upon you since your birth. Sorry about my background, right? But once we highlight that and then we bring it to the forefront of the issue, we can start to transform it. As Xandria said, it's a dialectic, and dialectics are transformative ways of communication. So that's what I have to say about toxic masculinity.
All right. Thank you, Giovanni. Joseph, go ahead.
I mean, so far I agree with much of what Jovain and Giovanni said, and I am the other chancellor, right, that Giovanni was speaking about. Yes, let me just identify myself. So, as you know, as Jovain mentioned not too long ago, our hall, Jovain's hall and I are have been traditionally known to harbor, harbor toxic masculinity, and it has not been a good look for the hall for the past so and so years, but I mean, this has been going on for so long. And this stereotypes are not something you can just get rid of overnight. I mean, check the facts, check the statistics. I mean, Johnson Hall has produced some of the world's not Jamaica alone, the Caribbean alone, but some of the world's greatest leaders, greatest entrepreneurs, greatest doctors, physicians, and the list goes on. So there is a stereotype that all trans rights are the same, they're toxic, so on, so on, so. But I mean, stereotypes, like I mentioned earlier, are not something that I can get rid of overnight. So a little forum, not a forum like this, a discussion like this is very important because we need to let people be aware of certain situations, like, for example, toxic masculinity. That's embedded in the minds for people for decades, centuries now. It's something we need to speak about, something we need to dive into the core of the issue so we can get rid of the simple little things that are causing these problems. So, I mean, addressing it from now, speaking about it from now, it's a very good start, and it can solve some of the problems, if not all of the problems.
All right. Thank you, Joseph. So, toxic masculinity, it really affects like everyone in society. So it affects the men themselves, it affects other men and the women, children around them, and it affects their relationships. And it goes even further to affect their physical and mental health. So I want to know, what do you believe can be done to decrease the effects of toxic masculinity in the Caribbean? Kemar.
Just give me 1 moment. You can go on to someone. Just give me 1 moment. Yeah.
All right. So I
Can
see
remark
Joseph has his hand up. Or Joseph, meanwhile, Kamar appears. Joseph?
All right, so what can we do? All right, I mean, we don't have to do anything major, because if we want to solve the problem, we have to start from the base of the problem, the foundation. We have to start it from there. So then gradually go up the ladder. So, I mean, from a basic standpoint, uh, from the homes, your friends, try and like reason with your male, the person who is a male who is going through the situation of, the stereotype of toxic masculinity. I mean, try to understand certain things because I mean, a simple little conversation can solve many things. A simple little conversation, trying to understand the situation. So basically what I'm trying to say is a means of understanding, in my opinion, I believe that's where we can start. One of the ways we can start. Because I'm sure there's many, many other ideas and methods coming from the rest of the panel. So I'll just like to hear the other ideas coming from the rest of the panel. So for me, it's just a means of understanding and simple conversations.
All right. Thank you, Joseph. Javine, go ahead.
All right, so for me, I think that one of the first things that we need to do is to hold individuals who have been portraying acts of toxic masculinity accountable. Let them know that this is something that's portraying, this is something that's fundamentally wrong, and it's something that we need to change. It begins also within methods of socialization, how women and men are socialized in order, like gender roles and so. So starting at the home, starting in terms of how our young men are raised, how our young women are raised, what do we expect from our young men, what do we expect from young women. That's, I guess, a way forward on how we can address the current situation, starting the change from this point.
All right. Thank you, Javine. Giovanni,
Thank
you
you.
there?
So in the Caribbean, specifically, if we're going to narrow it down to the region, one aspect of our culture that perpetuates toxic masculinity is excess. And I don't want nobody coming for me after this, but it's our music, guys. I personally don't listen to dancehall as much as other persons do, but our music promotes toxic masculinity to the highest degree. The culture of being a gallus. I know a lot of people feel like this is a positive thing to be a man and to be a gallus, but it's not. It's really not. Womanizing is the proper term for it. We're not womanizers. Womanizers are frowned upon. I don't agree with it. I don't agree with the practice of it. To fix it, we need to reform how we portray what being a man is in all forms of communication, whether it be through media, as Jovain said, through socialization, all of these aspects. Because once there's a foundation for toxic masculinity to grow, it is going to grow. It's going to become a part of us, and it soon will become an innate aspect of male growth, male development. What we need to do is nip it at the bud, stop that growth, and plant something new, right? Put new music out there, more positive music, music that empowers males to do things that makes them better as humans, as Savannah said, because we're not just males, we're humans. We have to look at it on that standpoint. So change the dialect, change the narratives, and get rid of toxic masculinity. That's just it.
Thank you, Giovanni. I believe you made some very strong points, and I agree. And I see Joseph has another point. Go ahead, Joseph.
Yes, I like to comment that point made by Giovanni, the womanizing. I mean, from a when you're from an adolescent stage, it's all cool. It's the in thing, it's the trend. You know, we need to get rid of that mentality because look at it from a long-term point. You are a womanizer from high school days. You're still practicing it into your 20s and 30s. You know what happens? You know what's the trend in Jamaica and the Caribbean? A lot of these womanizers have 12, 10, 14 children. And those 12, 10, 14 children are growing up in dysfunctional homes without their fathers. And that's one of the reasons why you have quite a number of toxic males in our society throughout Jamaica and throughout the Caribbean. A lot of males are growing without their fathers. And I mean, womanizing plays a role in it. Oh, me a goddess. This and this are the style. I mean, men are always being praised for having more than one woman and thing. And from the woman's side, if she have more than one man, it's a bad look for she. And I think it's very unfair, but it's just the reality. If one man have 10 girl, big up yourself, you're the done. If a woman's side now, completely different story. So you have to look at it from, like Jovain said earlier, the socialization aspect of it, the home. It starts from the home, nipping it from the bud, as Giovanni said, so it can start growing. We need to start from the foundation, from the base, and prevent it from getting any bigger. Womanizing is one of the contributing factors to dysfunctional families in the Caribbean. A lot of women are raising their 6, 7, 8 children on their own. And this affects not only the males in their character, in their growth, but their mentality as well. Their mental health is being affected because certain conversations you can't have with your mother, and certain conversations I believe you cannot have with your mother. I mean, the mother is always there with all the stress and the burden, but the father is traditionally known to be the disciplinarian. And I mean, certain conversations you can only hold with your father or with a male figure. So I mean, the woman alone can't handle everything. I mean, that's just my point on it still.
All right, thank you, Joseph. And you made a really great point there because, from toxic masculinity, then comes toxic masculinity. Ronaldo, go ahead.
All right, so I just wanted to go ahead and make a response in regards to the point that Giovanni made. So while I do agree that dancehall music does go ahead and it does facilitate a lot of the toxic masculinity that we have in our society currently, and music in general in different Caribbean countries and so forth, their music does sometimes go ahead and reflect toxic masculinity. However, I don't really think it's the dancehall music itself. However, it's who we are sometimes as a society, that generalization that we go ahead and give off, that perception of what a man should be. And this is what actually allows certain type of dancehall music to go ahead and flourish, because a lot of us, what the dancehall artists are currently saying is what a lot of persons are thinking. And that's why some of these dancehall artists are able to go ahead and make profits off their music, because while the message that they're pushing is quite toxic, we go ahead and we have a society that is going ahead and pushing similar values. So I think that in regards to decreasing the effects of toxic masculinity, we need to go ahead and first start with our children. We have our children, this new generation coming up. We have so much information at our fingertips. We need to go ahead and ensure that our children are learning the right ways, the right types of behaviors. We need to go ahead and we ensure that we normalize speaking, communicating. It doesn't matter what someone thinks of you. Do not be forced to be someone else. Persons might bully you, they might think you're homosexual, whatever the case might be. Go ahead and communicate. And I think that once we go ahead and we start from the grassroots level coming up, we will see where over time our society will go ahead and see improvements.
Thank you, Ronaldo. You made some really, really good points there. Savannah, you can go ahead with your point.
All right, so definitely some great points coming out here. Something that I want to address though, a lot of times, I'm not sure who said it, but something kind of rubbed me the wrong way. I'm not sure who said it or the exact comment, but I definitely feel like we need to ensure that we use our platforms to let persons know that certain behaviors are not right. A lot of persons sit and say, okay, it's International Men's Day. We need to encourage men to cry without fear. We need to encourage men to be open with their emotions, to do this, to do that. But at the end of the day, sometimes some of your friends, not speaking exactly to the men here or the other lady here, but sometimes your friends say certain things, they make certain misogynistic jokes, and it becomes a meme, and we run with them, and we don't actually tell them that this is something that is wrong. Another thing is a lot of toxic behaviors that stem from toxic masculinity. Men need to know that they need to stop blaming women for certain things. Now, a good example of this is rape culture. A lot of men, rather than saying, or rather than going to or attacking the man and saying, like, this wasn't, you shouldn't have done this, whatever, whatever, they're going to ask questions like, what was the woman wearing? Things like that. Narratives like that need to be changed. So I definitely think that I'm not seeing enough of that on platforms. I know that some men will speak out about it, but I know that some men, in terms of toxic behaviors, they tend to blame women for their toxic behaviors when you don't have to. At the end of the day, as I think it was Ronaldo was saying, it's not necessarily the music, it's what you choose. While I agree with both Gio and while I agree with Gio in terms of the music and stuff like that, I also agree with Ronaldo in the sense that you choose to be who you want to be. So even though music can play an impact, you in yourself have your own identity and you choose to be who you want to be. So that's my comment.
Thank you, Savannah. And our final point on this topic will come from Kemar Grant. Go ahead, Kemar.
Yeah, I just wanna comment on what Savannah was saying just now. I totally definitely agree with her comment as it stems talking about the rape culture. It definitely is we definitely need to hold men accountable and stop putting the blame on women as regards to that. But I also have a question in terms of not playing the devil's advocate here, but don't you find that because like, women are socialized, most women are socialized in the sense that they're taught that they need to have a man, a masculine man, someone to lead the household. And if what I find is that some women tend to, because I really socialize, they tend to love this toxic, they see this toxic man, the toxic masculinity, they embrace it. Not in the sense they will not realize it, but it's something that also that I see that I think also happens. Not that is right, not also not blaming women because, like I said, it has to do with the socialization process. Because what may be for Savannah definitely will not be for someone else. Just using you as an example, not saying you specifically. Um, but because she might prefer a man that is open and vulnerable and have a conversation with her, then maybe another woman that if a man comes to her and says, "Well, honey, I'm having an issue," to have that conversation that I don't want to hear, or take that somewhere else, and she's not interested in having that dialogue with him, not interested in conversing with him and really stemming really getting through the issues. Like, not even only women, as in relationships too, we also have those problems in within the household. The parents that you may go to have a problem to discuss certain things, whether your mother or father, and the advice they give you is not a positive one. And I don't think the blame can really be placed on our parents either, because there was just is something going back from generations. So I think we need to break it to really help the problem, make things a bit more normalized situations. That would be the main thing to do to help with the whole toxic masculinity issue, because it's just something, and there's just something that they've been taught and it's been passed down. That we've been taught, and it's just that we've come to this point. It's 2020. This is a different generation. Knowledge is at our fingertips, and I think that we can more so we are more so rebellious, and not rebellious in a bad way, but we with this generation tends to break to the stereotypes more so than generations before us. So I think that having the conversation and definitely breaking the norm could definitely move your toxic conversation and move toxic masculinity and make it something of the past, something that is a something that's a small issue in society more so than is such a big issue right now.
Just to add to that, I definitely agree, and I hope no one thinks I'm, trying to play the blame game here. But when you talk about issues of gender, when you're talking about, male issues, you can't leave out, women. When you're talking about women issues, you can't leave out males and so on and so forth. So I definitely just want to make that clear because a lot of times women themselves, we don't hold ourselves accountable. So there was a video that went viral recently where this YouTuber, she was saying, why you cry for your, homosexual or whatever. Women too, they help to, bring down men and make men feel like you have to be this type of person to be considered a man. We as women as well, and I'm speaking here especially, I'm appealing to the women here as well. We need to stop doing this. We need to empower men. So we also have a part to play. So just want to make it clear that it's not just because it's a male issue doesn't mean that males alone must address the issue. The gender issues are a community issue. We all need to work together to help solve these problems.
Thank
And
you.
you know,
Thank
so,
you, Jamal.
to
Thank you,
touch
Savannah. I
if you want
strongly
to,
agree with your point. Nicaro?
Savannah, it's interesting that you said that. Because it was a comment made in the YouTube chat. The YouTube chat is quite festive. Someone said another big issue we don't want to accept is that women actually contribute to toxic masculinity. So I want to hear what the women here have to say about that. Zandria?
Yes. I would agree that women are definitely perpetuators of toxic masculinity. A lot of the time too, we tend to neglect, and this might be very, I guess you say taboo of me to say, but a lot of the times, a lot of the behavioral, a lot of the groomings in which males get from their mothers actually contribute to how they end up being perpetuators of toxic masculinity. So one example I'd give um, is, for example, a mother who
All right, let's go back to the comment um, that Savannah made about the video and the girl that says if you cry, yeah, you know,
Or you want me to comment on that again? You want me
yeah.
to say something? All right. So I'm a feminist, and most persons know that I'm a feminist, and I say that proudly. I know what you're thinking. Oh my God, she one of them people that were hate man, we say hashtag men are trash and all those things. I'm not like that. Um, as I said, gender issues are a community issue, and something that really upsets me, not just as a feminist, but just as a human, is that we don't try to empathize with persons and we don't try to empower persons. There's a lot of conversation nowadays about women empowerment. By the way, yes, that is great. But us as women, there's nothing wrong with, empowering men, supporting men in the way that they need to be supported. And then something that also upsets me is that us as women, we're going to have children, we're going to have sons. You're gonna teach your son to um you know, don't cry when something happened to you, don't express your feelings, you know, certain things like that. So I just generally feel like women are a part of the problem. And I know that a lot of persons might be upset about that, but women are a part of the problem. um it's never just a male issue or a female issue. I just want everybody to understand that we need to come together and just support each other so that we can stop or reduce issues like toxic masculinity.
All right, thank you
Thank you
for
so much. Um, so earlier, Zandria was talking about, the way that boys are raised. So I remember that there some years ago there was this GIS ad where it had a mother who had the son just sitting down watching TV and reading, and she was sending the young lady to iron, to wash, to cook, to clean, to everything. And when she asked, why can't my brother help? She was saying, he's a man and that's not what he's supposed to do. That was basically the essence of it. And also, there's something nowadays that, as Savannah was saying about the type of feminist that she is, um feminism is really to uplift women, but nowadays there's a problem where instead of uplifting women, they tend to be putting down the men and seeing men as the enemy, and I think that is part of the problem. Zandria, Zandria, you can go ahead.
Oh yeah. I found it interesting that you mentioned that ad because it also came to my mind while it was buffering. Right, my brain had a technical difficulty. But yeah, a lot of the times, toxic masculine behaviors are perpetuated by mothers, and it's something that we don't talk about a lot. It's also an issue that is present, especially when a male is in a relationship with a woman. The mother will try to encourage and endure certain behaviors that are harmful to even her son's relationship, just so that he can be on the side of her son. So a lot of the times we as women, especially mothers, might use this, this nature and capacity that they have against their sons. And this just really is not very conducive in the long run.
all right. I think
Zandria.
that was a very heavy section of our discussion,
Yes.
but well, let's tone it down a bit and let's go into males and education. According to a 2018 online article by the World Bank, over the last 30 years, more women than men get an education in many countries. According to an article in 2015, for years, there has been a steady 70 to 30 ratio in favor of women at the University of the West Indies, a public university system serving 18 Caribbean countries and territories. Considering that the male population is not that significantly lower than the female population, why do you believe that there is such a wide gender gap when it comes to tertiary enrollment in the Caribbean? Let's hear from Gio.
All right. So when it comes down to males and education, it goes back to socialization, as Javane would always say. It's because we tell our sons that being this sort of man requires you to have a certain skill. And I'm not saying that vocational careers aren't needed and relevant. They are. We do need our vocational practitioners. But when you tell a child that he needs to be able to build a house, or I'm using the extremes here, guys, build a house, fix wire, yes, they're good skills to have, but they're enforced upon us. And then most, especially in a rural society, you will see where these things are pushed more than education. They're prioritized more for males than education is. And that's why you're seeing less male matriculation in the educational system. For years, this has been a conversation amongst scholars that and I think it's linked more to Jamaica than any other country, because the percentage of females that get to go to UE compared to the percentage of males is vast. It's a huge gap. And I think we touched down on it in sociology in high school, where my teacher, Mr. Humble, bless his soul, had drilled into us that we are men and we have our fellows for a reason. We have to be able to prioritize our own education, right? Even though we were brought up in this system where you have to can block, you have to can cut wood, you have to can connect wire. We have to say, is this what I want? And if it's not what I want, what do I need to get what I want? And we know that education is foundational for a lot of things. There's a lot of conversation saying that we need to throw away the education system. Yes, it does need to be reformed, right? And reformed in such a way that it can align with the different gender equity. That's what I'll call it. The different gender equity aspects that we need, so that every male, every female is exposed to the education that they can, use up to matriculate in life. So when it comes on to males and education, it has to be something that the males themselves prioritize for themselves, and also the fact that we break down this traditional man for Brockwood, man for Connect Wire. That if that's right.
Wow, Gio. Can I hear from Jovine?
All right, so yeah, as Gio rightly alluded to, it's basically what we've learned all our lives. Because even in the STEM areas, the science, technology, education, and math, engineering and math, you find out that there are a lot more men engaged in these areas as opposed to women, because this is what has been socialized into men. This is what has been drilled into your head, that you need to be able to learn to work with your hands. You need to be able to build something. You need to be an engineer, be a doctor, isn't it? But in terms of females, their career paths are more broad, I guess, because even in journalism, you find that a lot more women are in. In law, you find that a lot more women recently have been in law as compared to males, because even my faculty, there are a lot less males as opposed to females in the class. And as well as the assigned gender roles has a large part to play, because the males are always thought to be the breadwinners. And in a home where there's quite a number of children, once the male reaches of age, he is expected to go out and work, whilst sometimes the female is expected to continue her schooling. Because some of these examples have even been visible in my own community, where a good friend of mine, his father, upon reaching the age of 16, he was told to drop out of school and start working to support the family. His sisters were able to get their formal education, but because he was expected to come out of school, he started to do farming. He did not get to finish his formal education, as well as some of the expectations of men. The get rich quick scheme mentality in Jamaica has, I think, a large part to play with it, because a lot of men, instead of going to school and deciding, yet I'm going to get my degree, I'm going to go to university, they want to be a scammer, they want to plant weed, and say they want the money now. So I think it's what's placed on importance of in Jamaica, why sometimes education is not prioritized, because that the funds, the money, the BRAP lifestyle is prioritized more than the education is. And a lot of Jamaicans don't want to actually work hard for what they want, but prefer the easy way out, the quick route.
All right, thank you for that. Ronaldo.
All right, so I absolutely love that point that Jovine just made. The way how I look at this, to be honest, one of the key reasons why there's such a great difference between the male population at the university level as opposed to the female population is the role models that men tend to go ahead and have. A lot of the time we have some gentlemen who want to go ahead and be a footballer. They look up to persons like Cristiano Ronaldo, Messi, etc. They want to go ahead and be a dancehall artist. They look up to Alkaline, Vibes Cartel, etc. And many other time, even when they themselves, sometimes some of these young men don't even have the talent to go ahead and be in those areas, but because they go ahead and they just focus on one aspect of their role model's life that they want to go ahead and replicate. They go ahead and they neglect the academic aspect at times, and they pursue something that sometimes they're not even talented at. So I think that as men, we need to go ahead and ensure that when we're picking our role models, persons who we look up to, we focus on the values that those persons go ahead and portray. And I think that if we should continue to go ahead and do that, we'll see where maybe I'm not sure if at this stage we can go ahead and surpass the females when it comes to the persons that are enrolling at the tertiary level. However, I feel as if it would go ahead and help to kind of narrow the gap that is present. And as Jovine mentioned as well, like we walking in the community and we see these gentlemen, they have their fancy cars and so forth, and very little work is done to go ahead and get them. And then we see where some of these gentlemen, they go ahead and they get some of the nicest females, and sometimes as young men, we go ahead and we say, we want to go ahead and be like them. And those are the type of things that go ahead and poison our mind. And at a time when we need to go ahead and move forward, we find ourselves making a couple of steps back just because we want that easy way out. We want to go ahead and live that lavish lifestyle. And a lot of the times I feel as if that works against us.
Yeah, totally agreed. Zandre, your hand has been up for a while.
Okay, so I definitely agree with all of those points that were mentioned before, especially the ones about uh men or young men seeking to go into more talent related fields or having to assume the role of a breadwinner at an early age as opposed to females who have an opportunity to pursue higher education. I think there are other societal factors that we have to consider as well that prevent males from attaining higher levels of education. And one of them that come immediately to my mind is incarceration, because the male incarceration rate is generally higher than with females. And of course, if you're in jail, you more than likely won't have the ability, or you won't have the ability to attend school and to attain that higher education. And then even when, say for instance, they come out of jail some years or so after, they still might not have the resources that will help to allow them to achieve such education. So I think incarceration, it might not be one of the huger factors, but it really is a factor that we need to consider as it relates to this gender gap in education.
That's true. Kemar,
Yeah, to jump in on what Zandria just said, there's various societal factors that come into play as it relates to why there's this huge gap in terms, and the gap that continues to grow each and every year in terms of the enrollment at tertiary institutions. But definitely, the like many of the panelists said before, it definitely has to do with the same breadwinner situation. There are many males at this point in time. Some aren't even able to even finish their secondary school education. They're placed in a situation where they're either in a single parent household and they need to go and look for work to help support the household. Many too aren't encouraged to pursue that to pursue tertiary education. And it also doesn't only happen in the home, but I think so sometimes in the schools you find that teachers, they might see certain things that some things teachers also play a role because they aren't really, there's some that, not saying it's their job or their responsibility that is only solely lays on them as their role as a teacher, but or as an educator. But they tend to, from the time you say that, this is something, if is a career, a vocational career, which are very important, people tend to not want to look at you. They tend to look at you differently. Even in schools, you find certain teachers with, oh, that's not academic, so they tend to drift away from you and not really help you um, pursue that passion. They're not, as opposed, if you see want to be a doctor, lawyer, and accountant, they're really pushing and help you with your math, can help you with this, can help you with that. They're going to spend a world of time with you, help you to achieve that goal. For the time you said you want to be, you want to get into construction, whatever the case it be, it's just like, okay, you don't need anything for that, and that's really not the case. There are persons who will study architecture, and those are jobs that bring in a lot of money too. So I think that a conversation really needs to be had on that. Also, is that way is it not blaming teachers like I said before, but really need to have the conversation really need to have the conversation and the discussion about the whole situation. Sorry, I lost my train of thought just now. About the whole situation as relates to that. Um, yeah, that's about it for me. I lost my train of thought just now.
All right. I think Gio has a point related to what Zandria said earlier, and then we'll hear from Ronaldo.
Yeah, Zandria made a good point about the incarceration rate. I remember reading the other day about the link between education and incarceration rate in Jamaica. And it was during the time, the study was done during the time of Ronald Thwaites when he was education minister. And it declared certain schools posted a higher rate of their graduate or those who attended the schools to be incarcerated, up to like a 56% chance of the students being incarcerated. And weirdly enough, JC was in the top four, right? And in the top three, where they were common, they were what do they call them again? Co-ed schools. Holy Trinity, I think Norman Manley was on it. But then when you go deeper, it says that the amount of males that were in that accounted for almost, I think it was 75%, if I'm not mistaken. So there is an obvious link between education and the male profiling in our country. So that's something for us to note.
Okay. So with all this in mind, what do you believe can be done to increase the number of males who pursue tertiary education in the Caribbean? Savannah?
Right. So something that I realize is that, well, for me, two persons who are particularly a part of the problem are educators and parents. So I'll start with educators. Now, you'd think the educators would, be the ones encouraging men to go on and do what they're passionate about, regardless if it's, seem as a traditionally male field. But a lot of educators and a lot of the way how schools are set up is, for example, women, say food and nutrition. What the next one? Home economics. Things like I think cosmetology is a subject now or something like that. Those types of things. And men, you're expected to do, the electrical, the woodwork, things like that. We need to stop assigning gender to things like that and encourage persons to do what it is that they want to do, because at the end of the day a lot of persons are going into fields just because for please mommy and daddy, or because that's all the way the school system is set up. And then when they go into the workforce now, you realize that we're not being as productive as we can be as a country because people just don't care. Them just a freestyle life basically. When you do that and you tell persons to just do this because you're a man, you must do this. You're not getting the quality work that you're supposed to getting. And I don't think persons look at it on that scale, in the sense that these things, when you go and tell people what they must do with them life, these things not only just have an effect on them, but it also has an effect on our country and the quality of work that we're putting out as a country. Parents as well, a lot of parents like to live vicariously through their children. Us now, when we have our children, we need to stop that. Just because mommy did want or daddy did want to be an engineer and him have a son now and him say, oh, you need to be an engineer too, parents need to stop that and encourage um their sons to go on and do what they want to do. And at the end of the day, if it's not something you're passionate about, no matter how you try, you're going to be miserable, you're going to suffer. So just do, to the males watching, just do what you want to do. I know that it's very hard sometimes to go against parents because you're so dependent on your parents. Sometimes they're the only person who is paying for your education, so it's very hard to do that, and I get that. But I definitely think parents are a major part of the problem, educators as well, and we definitely need to stop that.
All right. Thank you
All
for that.
right. Thank you very much, Savannah. So, a lot of these issues that we've been discussing, and many of the issues affecting men in the Caribbean and overall, they have have to do with the defined male role in society. So I want to know what you believe about the defined male role. Do you believe that there should be a defined specific role for males in society? Savannah,
Savannah?
go ahead.
I don't think there should be how do I put this? I don't think it should be as rigid because, for example, when we look at things like domestic things, so for example, you know that the woman, she's supposed to cook, clean, and do all these things, wash plate, whatever, whatever. I don't think that certain things in life should say, "Oh, you're this gender, so you are the one who's supposed to be doing this, blah blah blah." Because then, um, it's gonna have a negative impact in the sense that as a male, and it also links to toxic masculinity in the sense that as a male you feel like, say, if a woman or if somebody's telling you that you should do something that is not traditionally male, you must retaliate, and god forbid you retaliate in a way that is violent and things like that. I just believe that persons should approach things in a sort of genderless way, because this is essentially one of the roots of the problem. Because you hear from your bond say, man must do this and woman must do this. So if you as a man don't do this now, that's essentially where everything comes in, because now you're confused, because from the day you're born, them a preach say this is what a male must do, this is your role. It's not set in stone. It's not set in stone, and I wish we would tell persons that these roles are really not set in stone. You're a man, you're living at the same house as a woman. What do you think she is? You should also play your part. Certain things just shouldn't have a gender role.
Thank you, Savannah. Thank you. Giovanni?
I will agree with Savannah on probably 99% of what she said, because I believe male, when we look at trying to destigmatize everything, we have to realize that these lines that we create, these borders that we create between what a man should do, what a woman should do, they're the things that more 9 times out of 10 cause the problem, right? If you tell a man that he needs to be the one who brings in the money solely, right, he's going to take up that role and then cause a plethora of issues. Him engage in a workaholic behavior and stuff like that, just so that he can provide for his family. Now, I strongly believe that yes, males should be providing for their families. However, it is not to say that a female should not provide for her family either. And that is what we need to start looking at. We need to start looking at the fact that one side can also affect the other side. One side can also reciprocate the other side, because the balance, the equity that we need in our interactions as humans is very essential. So, what I don't necessarily want to be saying is that males should not be what society say they are supposed to be, right? Don't get us wrong. I know Savannah shares the same sentiment. Do not get us wrong. Males should be protectors of their family. Females can be protectors of their families. Most females currently are protectors of their families. Single mothers, aunts, grandmothers. We see it in our society. We just need to understand that we're not supposed to attach this one role to the person to make them feel as though either them have complete autonomy over the role, or they- they're 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 at they're imprisoned by it, right? Um, and I want us to also run away from this Judeo-Christian belief that because Adam was created first, Adam is the sole provider of the family. Because Adam was created first, Adam is the first agent of Christ, or the first agent of man for God, through God, right? I'm a Christian. People, don't get me wrong, but run away from what certain principles in the Bible. kind of mislead us to think.
Thank you, Giovanni. You made some really strong points there. Jovin, go ahead.
All right, so I think this topic of gender was something that's so deeply rooted in our society. There's going to be issues to change it because even with our everyday lives, you generally portray that the men are the leaders. I did a whole assignment on this recently for international human rights law, the CEDAW, the Convention of Equality Discrimination Against Women. But the gender roles that have been assigned from our birth that the men should be the protector, the man should be the provider, the man should be the leader, the man should be there. As Giovanni rightly alluded to, the Bible's principles, because the Bible even portrayed that the man is supposed to be the first in the household, the wife under, and then afterwards the children and etc. So I think that it has a lot to do with, what we portray as gender roles. And I think that going forward, it's never should be the case where one specific role is assigned to each person, as Giovanni rightly alluded to. That and a man should not never be the sole provider. That it should never be thought that a woman has no right to contribute to the family because the man is supposed to be the provider. It should never be the case where a man feels demasculated because a woman is earning more than him because his own female is better employed than him because it's portrayed even TV and stuff. The Big Bang Theory, a lot of a show that a lot of us watch. I remember when Bernadette earned more than Howard, a lot of his friends were laughing at him and saying, "How do you feel that your wife earns more than you?" Because the male is generally expected to be the provider. The male is generally expected to be the one who is at the top of the social ladder in terms of the home. So it has a lot to do with what we're accustomed to, what we're cultured to. So going forward, I believe that never be the case where a man is the only provider. A man is the person who is supposed to be the aggressor. The family should be something that's a unit, I think. So the family is something that should work together to achieve cohesion. Um, these gender roles, even if we decide to do a strict textbook definition, I think will only cause further problems in this is what is assigned to that gender, that is what's assigned to that gender. So going forward, it's not like anarchy in a society where everybody can do everything, but gender roles are something that need to be seriously assessed, something that needs to be discussed, and something that needs to achieve cohesion within the family if gender roles are to be adequately addressed.
Thank you, Jovin. And you made a really good point there. And I'm glad that you mentioned, that part from Big Bang Theory because I believe that in solving some of these issues, the media plays a really great part in that. And actually to address these in movies, in shows and so on, it really gets you to think about it. And I see Savannah. Go ahead, Savannah, with your point.
Oh,
Savannah?
my hand was actually up from before because I spoke about this first, so that was an error.
Oh, all right.
All right, so moving on to the next question. How do you believe these stereotypes affect boys growing up in the Caribbean? Gone, Mr. Sanster.
Yes, so I mean, for me, in my opinion, it goes back to mental health. So I mean, how does the stereotype affect males in Jamaica and the Caribbean? Depression, anxiety. I mean, peer pressure is one as well, and some of the ways that the males in our society cope with depression and anxiety with nobody to talk to. Some of them they got to the marijuana and one of a hot spliff. Them drink a one beer, them drink some white rum, and I mean they smoke the tobacco, which is worse than marijuana. And I mean it over time affects the various organs in the body, makes them sick. And when you check the stats, women not only in the Caribbean but across the world live longer than men. more males are dying, not only in Jamaica and the Caribbean, but across the world. And when they have nobody to talk to, when they don't have a male figure to reason with, they turn to the wrong alternatives for soothing, for comfort, the wrong things. Take up the gun and then bust it. Depression, anxiety is a serious thing. Them have no shoulder to lean on, nothing like that. They turn to the wrong alternatives. And then you're gonna hear say, oh, he's a boy, so I'm gonna go on certain way and so and so. Like I mentioned earlier, sometimes they just want somebody to talk to. A simple little conversation. I mentioned this earlier. So I mean, depression, anxiety are some of the ways in how it affect males. And when they're going through these issues, they turn to the wrong things and it just makes situations worse. Although they might feel good, they might feel better in the moment, but long term, they actually make themselves worse and the entire situation worse.
All right, Gio.
I agree with Joseph so much, and that actually gave me a pang of emotions because it's so true. I live in an inner city community, and I see this reeled over the film countless times. You know, people I've grown up with have fallen by the wayside. They're falling into the societal normative of taking up certain things to release themselves from the certain some feelings that they've had because of the stereotype that's been imposed on them. But one stereotype that I've come in contact with multiple times, and it's affected me as well, is the fact that a man is supposed to behave manly. This machismo that we're supposed to be displaying. I went to an all boys school, and it was heavily enforced that hey, yeah, man. So you're supposed to act like man. You're not supposed to have certain girly features and certain things. And that stereotype put me in a lot of problems because anybody who knows me, my expressiveness comes off as effeminacy, and I will accept that I am somewhat effeminate. Um, and it posed a lot of problems for me. I overcame it eventually in my later years, but becoming a peer counselor and having three charges meaning boys that I take care of. One of them was bullied repetitively because his voice was higher than everybody else's. He sounds like a girl. Savannah voice deeper than female, right? So the thing is about the stereotype, it drives them into this corner. As an a columnist that I was reading about the other day says, it's called the man box. So you need to stay in the box. What was say, I am a man and I don't do this. And you know what it drove him to do? He didn't speak for almost a year. His mother had made complaints, and that's how he became one of my charges. His mother, he didn't speak for a year. He came from Georges, came to Woolmer's. He moved from Georges because of the bullying, didn't speak for a year. And the breakthrough came not from us, but from I think church. He's a Seventh Day Adventist, and from constant counseling, having somebody to talk to, he was able to come out of that man box that he was placed into. But the things that he had to deal with, depression, suicidal thoughts, guys, they're very serious. um I don't know how much I can stress it. Joseph stressed it before. Men are dying more than women, and it's because we don't have proper outlets, guys. If you feel like you're being forced into this man box, if you feel like you're being placed in a situation where you can't talk about your feelings, where you can't express yourself, find an outlet, find some way of release that is not negative. You don't have to turn to what everybody says is working. Not everything works for everybody. Find some way to run out of the stereotype, deal with your emotions, and better yourself as a male.
Strong points, Gio. Zandria.
Yes, I definitely agree with Gio and Mr. Sangster on their uh, point about these stereotypes being stifling to males. I think it's definitely overwhelming. For example, if you consider any one stereotype that is ingrained within our society, and how that one stereotype can affect various facets of the male, for example, family life, school life, if they go to church, church life, then you really start to think about how overwhelming just one stereotype can be for a male. And that doesn't account for all the rest of them that add to this. So I think as well too that these stereotypes they create this cyclic reaction. So you begin with this stereotype that is very negative, very bad. For example, the narrative that men shouldn't show emotions. And so from that you get men stifling their emotions, which leads to them not managing their stress properly, which only aggravates everything, makes it worse, and it starts over the cycle. It's just very overwhelming when you think about it. And I'm not a male, but I can only empathize with how difficult that must be, you know? Yeah, that's just what I wanted to add to their points.
All right.
Um,
Thank you, Andrea. So, the male role and the different stereotypes, and it affects the behaviors of males. So, I want to know, what do you believe are some of the misconceptions and restrictions to the male role in relationships? Go ahead, Javian.
Well, as I guess particularly in relationships, it's what's expected of the man. The man is expected to be the person who provides and be the person who is giving care, especially I guess even in person who's a young adult, sometimes the person may not be earning enough, but yet he's expected to provide for not only himself, but his girlfriend's needs. And this causes undue pressure on what the individual is experiencing. So in terms of relationships, the whole idea, the Gallus concept, that males are supposed to have more than one woman, that it's not masculine to only date one girl. So this obviously has a large impact in terms of how women and men, how the relationship may occur, like what will happen between them, because this level of trust does not exist because most females expect that their men are going to cheat. It causes undue arguments, it causes everything. Because some girls, if them dream that them boyfriend cheat on them get up and them quarrel. Sometimes it's, I guess, women being sometimes insecure and having issues and reacting over little things, but in some instances, because of what has been portrayed in society and what has been the expected thing from the male is expected that he's going to go out and cheat. The male is expected that he's not going to have this one woman. He's expected that he's supposed to be the sole provider. He's expected that he's going to be the, I guess, the aggressor in terms of if something does happen. And you know, these masculine roles and the whole definition of masculinity has a great deal in terms of how relationships are handled. The whole toxic masculinity, the whole level of aggression that men are supposed to portray has a great impact in terms of how females and men relate. How, not even just relationships wise in terms of man and girlfriend, but even in terms of friendships, because some men them can't go without them look them friend we are female because it's expected that we need to chop every girl that they're in our vicinity. It's expected that we need to be the chopper in the group, we need to make money, we need to and some of the portrayals that are put against in society, as I said, because the whole scammer thing, the man expected to make the money because if me not provide enough, if me not make enough money, and the girl I go see this man with more money, more often than not, because of what expected in society, the girl I go leave me because me not have no money. You gonna see the boy they have money, my drive markets him, can chop a road, him a go party, and him a buy big buckler, ace of spades and them way there. So I guess it's just what society has dictated to us. It caused a lot of effect in terms of how we relate and friendships and everything as a I'm going there because other panelists have more stuff to say.
All right. Thank you, Javian. Joseph? All right, moving on.
All right, so
Giovanni, go ahead, Giovanni. Oh, sorry. Joseph?
let Giovanni go ahead. Let Giovanni go ahead.
All right, go ahead, Giovanni.
I mean, I can only agree with Javine. But one thing that Javin, I know he was running away from talking about, was the thought that a lot of us been running down, and the conversation that's in the younger space now is how every girl wants a money man. Um, and it's become sort of a norm now that the primary function of a male in a relationship, throw away the family life, throw away everything else. In a relationship, it's become a function of the male to provide financially, monetarily. You have to have money. And it's really bad for a lot of us as guys. And even though we play it off as a joke more while, it's really serious because you have those males who they're actively searching for that one girl, that one special person, and every girl keeps saying, "But you're not drive a Mark X, or you not have no car, or you can't help me get a Bridget sandals and them something there." Yes, Andrea, but we have to recognize that males are not we're not banks, we're not an ATM, and that's one very common misconception that our generation has built up. Another thing that I want to talk about regarding to males and relationships is the misconception. Everybody has construed the dominant role in a relationship is supposed to be male. And understanding humans, as Savannah will always say, is that dominance is not exclusive to males. There are females who are dominant too. And society tells us that the male must be dominant. He has to be the one who has the assertion of dominance in the relationship. That doesn't have to be so. So when people look outside, so let's take it from this vantage point. People from from outside of the relationship look and they see the qualities of dominance being asserted by the female. They might go look on the man and say, "What kind of mama man that? Oh, yeah, have your woman a deal with a certain way, or she show you say this and that and whatnot." And it's it's hurting for the males in the relationship. I've been one of those males. I'm not very dominant. And people have looked on my relationships with females and they're like, "So, Gio, who are the man? You are shy." I remember, funny story. I was with this one girl who had short hair, and my best friend Leo Aiton, bless his soul. him used to say, him used to call her Ballad one, but him used to call me the girlfriend. So Ballad girlfriend, how you doing? And even though it was a joke, and I knew it was a joke, persons from the outside would look onto it and say, "Boy, Gio, you sure you're not one of them boy they you just use this as a cover up." So these are things when it comes down to relationship and males, they show themselves for it. And we just need to destigmatize ourselves and understand that dominance is not exclusive to males. It's not solely something that was, imparted on males by God or any other deity that you believe in. It's across the board.
Thank you, Giovanni. Go ahead, Joseph.
Yeah, man, I can go ahead now.
Yeah, you can.
Yeah.
Yeah, man. So, I'm going to start off my point with two posts I saw on social media sometime this week, you know, trying to wrap my head around the main point, which is what men want. So, first post is by a female, and it says, "I like to talk things out. I love clarity. I am an adult. Communicate." That's the first post. Second post now is this. Until men and women start having honest conversations about who they truly are, what demons they battle with, where they lack and what they truly want, love will continue to be a temporary emotion. Honesty and communication are key. Stop being afraid to speak on where you are in the relationship. That's the second and final post. So I start off my point by using those two posts because I think a lot of relationships, not just now, but this has been going on for centuries, for decades. before Christ, a lot of the relationships lack honesty, they lack communication, they lack trust. And some people, they just jump like, all right, you see somebody where you're like, you start talk, the next day, the both of you are in a serious relationship. Um, that's not even 1 week good enough. Not even 1 week good. 2 day pass on a day. I mean, you don't know the person. You barely know the person. I mean, you don't know their likes and dislikes, their hobbies. From my point of view, you're supposed to get to know your partner before you can say, hey, you want to take this relationship serious from the friendship to, all right, I'm the boyfriend, you're the girlfriend relationship. I believe you have to get to know the person because, I mean, for example, you have a lot of persons who go into relationships that last for literally 1 month. 1 month, sometimes less. And those two persons hate each other for the rest of their lives. Every thought, remembrance of our memory of that person, it just disgusts them. I mean, and out of those very short relationships that don't last long, sometimes children come out of the relationships, and sometimes when the parents are around, they might be fighting, they might be quarreling, and that's not very good for the child. Not very good for the child. So I mean, I think it's best to be straightforward, to be honest from the start, from the get go, straight and even until during the relationship too. Be straightforward, be honest. You need to know if your partner is on the same page as you. Honesty is key, trust is key, communication is key. And I think those things are what a lot of relationships are lacking, both on the male side as well as on the female side. And that's just my take on it.
All right, thank you, Joseph. Kemar, go ahead.
Just to add on what Giovanni was saying just now, as it relates to the role of a man in a relationship. I think, well, for me personally, I believe a relationship is different. Every you do what works for you. But like Giovanni was saying, he's a bit more he's like dominant one in a relationship, and I think that is fine. Some people just like to relax and know about, okay, my significant other has everything under control. And I think that those are things that we should embrace. If that works for you, that is something that I think the issue too is that we let other people's opinions really get involved in what in your relationship. Where really truly relationship is between you and the other person. So if you find that your boyfriend as a female, if your boyfriend is happy with you taking charge, whether it's picking where we go to eat, whether it's deciding if you're an adult couple, deciding where you go to live, things like that. If you're fine with that, then you have a female friend coming and say, well, oh, I don't think that that he's manly enough for you because you seem to be doing everything. And you know within yourself that that's something that you're fine with that. Why have that outside influence then come in and putting that voice in a relationship, but then have to put some to cause strain. So I think is really dependent on the persons that are in the relationship. But as relates to the money thing that they were mentioning just now, spending, um, I believe in 50-50, 50-50 situation. Um, it doesn't really matter to me. Um, is I think it's the thought that counts. If you purchase something for somebody, whether it be small, whether it be big, I think that is the thought that counts. You need to know the person that you're dating to, because if you're a man and dating a female, and you know that she's a woman that accustomed to certain tastes, and she's gonna the one that's gonna have an issue if you buy her um a ring pop, just giving a well example, a ring pop rather than a diamond ring, then that's an issue for your relationship, because you know her needs, you know her wants, you know what she requires, you know her level of satisfaction. So then don't expect that you're gonna give her that. I mean, you should expect it, but then if she isn't really satisfied, don't be too disappointed. Don't be too surprised, sorry, that she's not satisfied. Then you guess you should know that she's the one for you. She can't be, well, if she can't accept it and embrace that, okay, at least he thought he was thoughtful enough to give me that instead of giving me this. Um, and it kind of, it really does boil down to that, because um, it just really boils down to know your partner and having realistic ideas, because you can't expect someone that's at university now studying to get a degree doesn't have a job to get you certain things in life that they themselves can't afford for themselves in the current moment. So we put that high expectation on that person to get you something that's of high value in terms of cost, but not high value in terms of significance. Because something that may be very not that pricey, but have a high level of significance into the relationship. I'll be moving a bit more, have long-standing value, rather than something that's going to be there for 5, 10, 15 minutes and then it's gone. So it really just boils down to getting to getting to know the person and more so the relationship itself, rather than um, yes, society plays a part, but rather than a whole generalized thing.
All right. Thank you, Kemar. Ronaldo, go ahead.
All right, so I just wanted to go ahead and comment on the point that was made in regards to men being emotional in a relationship. I really can't understand why us as men, we have an issue with the idea of crying in front of a female that we're speaking with. And, I was thinking while everyone was speaking, and I was like, I would never want to be with a female who I feel insecure about crying in front of. I want to be with a female that every aspect of life I am able to go ahead and discuss with her. If I am sad, I am able to share those sad moments with her. If I am happy, I am able to go ahead and do the same. However, we have gone ahead and built up this idea that if we should cry, we're going to be weak. The woman that got pre, we say, we are not really man, we're not tough, we're soft, wet bread, and all of those little things. And, I think it goes back to the point that someone was making earlier. This is why a lot of our relationships cannot go past 1, 2, 3 months, because of this idea. Us as men, sometimes we go ahead and we try to appeal to a female sexually instead of emotionally. We go ahead and we try to go ahead and have a sexual connection instead of going ahead and trying to communicate, going out on those little evenings, sitting on the beach, just talking, getting to know each other, and all of those stuff, because we don't want nobody to look at us and say, yo, the brother yourself, watch what him I do with the girl and thing before him go ahead and he make that one move then. You know, and because of this perception, a lot of men end up not being able to find happiness for such a long period of time. And it's just because we are afraid to go ahead and express ourselves around women, and I don't understand why. Because women don't go ahead and have that issue in general. A woman will always feel free to go ahead and cry in front of you. That's her way of expressing herself. So I believe that as men, we need to go ahead and take that into consideration. Don't be afraid to be emotional. Nothing is wrong with that. You're a human. Be emotional around someone. Feel safe around someone. And once you go ahead and you find that you have that in a relationship, you will see where you're able to go past that 1 month barrier, that 3 month, that 1 year, until when you look, you're happily engaged, you get married, children on the way. That's how you go ahead and you build a lifetime with someone. You have to go ahead and have that emotional connection with them.
All right. Thank you, Ronaldo. You brought up some good points there. Savannah, go ahead.
All right, so I really like this question. First of all, I'd like to say that a lot of women, I don't know which Netflix romance movie them living now, but some women, I want to address comments about, women viewing men as banks or stuff like that. A lot of women need to stop it. How do you expect somebody who is in university like you, the average male now, the average male? Of course, you have some people who are just rich or whatever from the get go. But how you expect the average male to provide for you, have car and all these things? And men, you also need to recognize when some women just want you for your money. They don't want you for you. I had a friend, he was really devastated because there was, this lady, he treated her really him just treat the lady good, right? And she, ended up going to someone who had basically some traits of, some toxic masculinity traits and stuff. And it was essentially because he was rich, him, him is a money man, him come from like a rich family and whatever. And at the end of the day, she ended up being miserable in the relationship and whatnot. Sometimes, men, you can't force certain things. So I know that you might like a girl and you want to impress her, you want to buy her this and you want to buy her that, you want to go out of your means and so on. But do you really want to be with somebody who just wants you for your money? Because that's not a sustainable relationship. Because when you get to a point where you can't buy her certain things, because sometimes things can happen, how are you guys going to build a sustainable relationship? The relationship is just on money. When you look, you can't talk to her about anything because she just want you to buy her this, she just want you to buy her that. When you want to show express your emotions, she'll come to you and say, what you cry for? These types of things because she doesn't see you as a human being. She sees you as a bank. Recognize the ladies who see you as a human being versus ladies who see you as a bank. That's it from me.
Yes, Savannah over there preaching.
Yes.
Go ahead, Zandria.
Okay, yes. I'm mainly going to speak on Gio's points. Well, firstly, I want to say that it really is natural for a woman to choose male partnerships based on how he can financially provide for her, right? It's kind of like woman nature. But of course, I must agree that women, them really take it out of context, them go overboard sometimes and they don't take certain factors into consideration. So that's one thing. The second thing I'd like to mention is that the narrative that stoicism is a determinant of masculinity, it just really needs to stop. I think that is one of the things that really harms relationships, both on the woman side and the man side. So that would involve things like leadership that Gia talked about, the idea of dominance. In Jamaica, dominance, particularly male dominance, is seen as leadership that is led with force, led with extrovertedness, all of that. And that's just simply not the case all the time. Not because a male is not extroverted or shows, I guess you'd say, physical dominance. That doesn't mean that he's not a leader and that he's not leading properly in the relationship, as you mentioned before. Another thing too is the stoicism, the idea of stoicism correlating to masculinity. It really harms the communication in relationships. And a lot of the times we might think it's just for males alone, but it also affects females. And I realized that too when you think about some of the ideals, the masculine ideals that are pushed, it really does shape how females want males to communicate with them. I personally experienced this because for people who would know me, they would know that I might tend to come off a bit more aggressive than the average female. And so I found myself, and this is something that I've had to assess, I found myself seeing males communicating vulnerability openly. I used to find it very repugnant, and that's just the reality. But once I started to realize that it is natural for males to express certain emotion and it's necessary, then that's where I realized that communication in a relationship is really, really improved. Yeah, so women need to also address their perspectives on males showing emotion in relationships, and that would also help the problem a lot as well.
Thank you, Zandria. And our last point on this topic comes from Giovanni. Go ahead, Giovanni.
Yeah, very interesting, Zandria, Miss Aggressor. But I really wanted to talk on something that Ronaldo touched on very briefly, and it's the sexual aspect of relationships. all of us are still running, around the taboo that is sex and talking about sex. But it's serious when we talk about males in relationships in relation to sex, because as we said before, and Joseph would have alluded to it before, and Javane I think alluded to it. Man supposed to look like Gallus, have enough gal in a bungle, supposed to have intercourse every night, if not every 2 days. There is this there's this attachment that if you're not knock something, you're not a man, right? And when it comes down to relationships, it's very detrimental because we see where now men, and I know the Savannah is probably going to rile up when I say this, but they feel as though they're entitled to sex. They're entitled to the body that their female partner has. And that is not so. Guys, no matter what you feel, you are never, there was no contract signed by either God, Allah, one of the Hindu god them, say you are entitled to your female partner's body, right? Sex is a sacred act, I believe it is, but that no means say you're supposed to have sacred obligation for your female body. And that's how it work. So just yeah.
All right. And I see, Jovain has a point here. So go ahead, Jovain.
All right, so since Gia touched on that, the whole thing of entitled to a female's body, I just kind of want to expound on it and speak on it more. Because usually in a relationship, the man is expected to bring the monetary, to bring the money, as nearly everybody said tonight. But in a relationship, the female is often thought that what she carries to the table is sex. And I think it's something that's wrong with society. That a lot of times women only place value on what they can offer in terms of their body, what they can offer only in terms of sex, but they don't offer anything else. And sometimes, I'm not just attacking women with this, but yeah, sometimes they don't try to bring anything else to the table other than the sex. And the man is to blame to it for it too, because what they often want, only thing that they go for is sex. Everything they do is try to be that horny dogs mentality. The whole girlish persona in Jamaica is that we should be knocking as much girl as possible. And what women want in exchange usually is that we have to be financially stable and we have to be a person that is providing money. So I think it's something that's fundamental around society in terms of the whole sex thing, isn't it? So don't want to take up too much time. I'm a rant one night.
All right, very good points, but I'm afraid we are running out of time, so we need to move on to the next section, which is male victimization and victims. So, victimization is defined as the act of singling someone out for cruel or unjust treatment. A victim is defined as a person harmed, injured, or killed as a result of a crime, accident, or other event or action. Panelists, do you believe that male victims of abuse, including domestic, sexual, and physical abuse, are acknowledged in the Caribbean? And I saw Savannah's hand up first.
Oh, my hand is up. All right, I'll go first. Are they acknowledged? I'm not gonna say they're not acknowledged at all, but I definitely feel like as a man, persons here that for example, your woman a beat you, it's really look down on them, see you as a mama man, if that's the term. Them see as a mama man, them see as workless, not understanding that persons think that only women can get abused. They're not sensitive to the fact that men can also get abused. I know that there was a conversation on, I think it was Twitter, with women sharing their unfortunate stories going through, sexual abuse or sexual assault, and men also sharing it, and some persons, those one-off persons who always have some completely different views from the rest of the masses, saying no, like, most of the time it's not really sexual assault that happens to men because them enjoy it and whatever, even though it never consensual and stuff like that. So when it comes down to abuse, for men, a lot of persons, they don't take it seriously in terms of sexual assault, you enjoy it, or it wasn't really, or some persons also don't believe that you can, rape a man. Men can be sexual assaulted because they view them as such horny sexual beings that even if it wasn't consensual, them enjoy it. So a lot of persons take it as a joke. You as a man come and say, my girlfriend or my wife beat me, for example, and people would have probably dead with laugh. Some people would have probably dead with laugh. They must say, but yeah, man, you have to take charge, you have for this, you have for that. So they don't, a lot of persons don't view it as an actual social issue, and a lot of persons don't even think it's real.
That's true. Zandria, hand it up.
Oh yes, I definitely agree with Savannah. It's not a case where male abuse or abuse towards male is completely neglected, but a lot of the times when males come out and they speak about their experiences, they receive a lot of negative feedback. And I think that has a lot to do with the society's mindset, of course. But if the society's mindset doesn't change, then that will also definitely affect influential persons in the society. For example, the law enforcement. I can recall my parents always telling me about this story when I'm here about this man gets sexually assaulted by his wife and him go police station and report it and them laugh off of him like that is not okay. I don't think that is okay. That's problematic. That's very problematic. And we need to realize that male, even though we might tend to see them as overtly sexual or more sexual than females, they still have feelings and abuse still affects them. And the abuse that they experience, it still will add to their behaviors in the future, particularly behaviors related to toxic masculinity. So it's something that needs to be put at the forefront and something that needs to be addressed.
All right, we'll take Jovine and then Kemal.
All right. Well, yeah, honestly, I agree with both points raised before that male victimization is something that's not often talked about. It's a fact that women are more often abused than males ever will be, and that's something fundamental around society and something that needs to be changed. There should be no abuse taking place, neither sex. But going there, as a person who is within the legal sphere, I'm a law student. Know that there are very few cases of actual assault brought forward for males reporting females, even if it's a case where it does happen. Because in the legal sphere, it's thought that even the legal sphere, even in our society, it's thought that a man cannot be abused by a woman. And even within sexual assault, Jamaican legislation, in its definition of rape, does not have any um, interpretation that a man can be raped. A man can only be sexually assaulted by Jamaican legislation, but they cannot be raped. So the whole idea of victimization in males is, even though it's less than women, is something that does happen and something that we do need to accept, because it's often thought that a man is weak if a woman put him hand on him. A man is less than manly if the woman is actually abusing him, and it's not thought as something that's serious. I would highlight popular something that's going on social media right now. Johnny Depp and Amber Heard. I think most of us know about it. That Johnny Depp has literally brought forward evidence that his wife was abusing him, has literally brought forward the voice recordings, showed bruises, his finger was cut off once, and he had to go back to the hospital so that they could get it reattached because of the abusive relationship that he was in with his ex-wife Amber Heard. But because he is the male, he's generally not thought of being capable of being abused. He's thought of that, he has to be the abuser. She even accused him of being the abuser, and there was a whole thing. After he managed to disprove it, there are some still articles going around that he was the abuser. He recently lost the defamation case against the Sun in the UK because a defamation case because the Sun had accused him that he was an abuser and that he had abused his wife Amber Heard. And the reasoning for him losing was that because they thought it was fundamentally true. Even though Johnny Depp has brought forward evidence that Amber has abused him, that showed voice recordings that she has literally called him a bitch because, he can't take a punch. So it's something that's fundamental around society because we don't accept that male abuse can occur. We only think that only females can be abused. Within our legislation, it's something that needs to be addressed within the societal norms, in conversations that we have. I agree that females are abused a lot more than males, but it's not the case where it doesn't exist. It's something that we need to recognize and realize existing. Something that we need to talk about.
All right. Kamar.
Yeah, definitely agree with the points that were made as relates to males being abused. Um, but when we look at abuse, people tend to often think about only strictly physical violence and stuff and sexual violence, but it's also emotional abuse. You find that there are men that are in relationships with women that every day telling them things, they calling them names and different things that really is really degrading to the man himself. And he some persons don't realize that because she isn't hitting him, she isn't physically assaulting him, so he's saying it as fine, as okay, she's just speaking her mind or whatever the case may be. But if you're in a situation where where every day you're being um called by things that aren't your name, you're gonna give a name, then well, yeah, this is something that definitely isn't right. As it relates to the physical abuse, yes, there are men that are physically abused by women, and I think it's a situation because of the embarrassment that we tend to face that we don't speak about it. Um, it isn't something that is embraced by society as an issue. We see it as domestic abuse is mainly a women's problem. That's something that women encounter more majority. Yes, it's a majority in terms of women, but men are also, and I think too, it's not starting off at that point, but I think too, if men were to be honest with the situation, realize that they are being abused, I think the figures will be pretty much close. I don't think it'd be that far off, realistically speaking, because I think there are really a lot of men that are in abusive relationships and just don't know, because they know these things to look for, because they might think it's not physically abuse, because they're not being physically touched, whether it's sexually or whatever the case may be. But I think if we were to really look at it, you would see yes, that it's a real problem. We don't have as many support groups as we do for women. I think that's another issue too. And NGOs just doesn't exist in terms of support that men need for those situations. You find, I know here in Barbados we have one organization that deals with that deals with those kinds of abuse against men, but the participation stuff isn't really that heavily involved, because, like I said before, persons are embarrassed that they would have been in that situation. A woman would have had that physical dominance or even emotional dominance to abuse them. Um, yeah, that is mainly my point on the situation.
All right, thank you, Kemar. Go ahead, Giovanni. Giovanni?
Yes. Um, so in all the talk of victimization, um, I agree with everybody, but there's something that we haven't touched on, and it's really something that we talk about in the media all the time. How people falsely victimize themselves, and I think as males we need to recognize when we falsely victimize ourselves. It's International Men's Day, and we're trying to promote better behavior in ourselves. What do we want? Media tells us that we want to be right all the time as males, and that's where the false victimization comes into play. So we Javane would have told us that women are proven to be more abused either domestically or sexually more than males. Males will jump onto this train that says I'm abused too, and they use some conflated situation to make it seem as though they need to be pitied, right? It happens a lot on Twitter. People say Twitter is a toxic place. It's not a toxic place. You just have a lot of toxic people and toxic masculinity. So we need to recognize and address that the fact that males are now trying to make the gaslighting. I think that's what it's called. Males are trying to gaslight themselves into this innocent position so that they aren't like prosecuted, if for lack of a better word, right? And it helps us as males to be better persons. So the message today, guys, is to be better, be a better you, want things that better you, right? Gaslighting, it don't do it. Falsely victimizing yourself, it doesn't do it. We need to run away from that narrative and just reform how we think about things.
Thank you for that
I
point, Giovanni. And I hear you mention, toxic people on Twitter, toxic masculinity, but it's toxic all over social media. And there are many toxic females as well. I saw there was a story about two stories actually. There was one where a man, his girlfriend held him at machete point. It wasn't knife, it was machete point, and she raped him. And persons on social media, a lot of females were there, and they were commenting, that it wasn't this, it wasn't that, and it's time that females take back this, and it's time that males get a taste. But the thing is that shouldn't be what is happening is that we are viewing, like, a lot of females are viewing males as the enemy. And when you're using, like, when other males, bad things happen to them, you're saying that, is payback for what other males did, and it's totally different. What we're doing is viewing males as a whole other species, but, like, we're all human beings, must look at persons individually and not, associate things with gender and so on. Savannah, go ahead, Savannah.
All right, so really lovely conversation coming through here. I have about three things to comment on. So something that particularly piqued my interest was a comment from Giovanni where he was saying that a lot of persons view Twitter as a toxic place. And then Cylindian was saying there's toxicity all over. But I genuinely believe that a lot of persons view Twitter more so as a toxic place because persons are more inclined to show you exactly who they are on Twitter and show you exactly how the world is. A lot of persons might prefer Instagram because Instagram, a lot of persons show you what they want to show you, this type of life, this luxurious type of life, their wins, them this, them that. On Twitter, you see a lot of raw things coming through. You see how the world is you see how the world actually is. And a lot of people cannot deal with that. Another thing, so yes, Gio brought up the point about how you might have a thread or some. I'm speaking about Twitter here now. You might have a thread where a woman says that she was, abused or something like that, especially sexually abused, and then instead of empathizing or offering some word of encouragement or just being there simply, you'd always have that random man or some random men saying men get abused too. Nobody never asks that. I mean, of course we know that men get abused too. If you want to talk about men getting abused, start a new thread, but don't comment it under this thread because that's simply insensitive. It's like you're saying, um, where you going, so we get abused too. Like that's basically what it looks like. Even if that's not what you're trying to say, it's distasteful and I don't like see it. And people for just stop them, something them. Next thing, next point I want to raise is about the revenge thing that Cylindian was talking about. So as I said previously, I'm a feminist, and what I realize radical feminism is becoming, I'm not a radical feminist by the way, but what I realize radical feminism is becoming is I want to take back my power and I want to be superior to men because of the historic discrimination of women and a lot of these heinous crimes, gender-based crimes that are meted out against us. But I want to let everybody know that it shouldn't be a battle of, I want to be superior and I want revenge. It cannot be like that. Everybody needs to work together and everybody needs to stop this thing about trying to one up people. Why you want to one up people? As I said in the Twitter threads and so on, when men want to talk about their story underneath somebody else's story, why you want to one up people? Why do we have to be constantly in this struggle, this battle to try to say that we're more than other persons. And I will always say this, and I might sound like a broken record, I will always say this: we need to stop approaching things in terms of gender and look at it on a humanistic standpoint. We're all humans, nobody is superior. And until we realize that, we'll always be in a constant gender struggle.
So true. Kemar,
Yeah, I just want to comment on what Savannah just said, especially as it relates to Twitter. What I find, the same thing she was saying, it's not that men don't have these problems, or even in situations women don't have these problems, because I find some things that women do bring up their issues under a male thread. It's not that these issues don't exist also, but at this point in time, we're having this conversation about that on this particular thread. That's the conversation we're having. And then if when sometimes you comment like that, it comes across as though, okay, and that's like I have an issue, and you're trying to say, well, oh, my issue is bigger than yours. So yours doesn't matter right now. And it's definitely agree with Savannah. And we need to think about it on a humanistic level. We're all human beings, so we're all human beings, and we all have these issues. And I think we need to work together to help solve them. Having this whole male against female situation and this whole clashing all the time, it really doesn't solve the problem. It just makes it, to me, pretty much prolongs the inevitable in terms of the damages are going to occur, because I often like the same thing. I love politics. So I often look at it. Same thing with liberals and conservatives. I find that they're often clashing on issues. And what I find with liberals, we have there are various categories, and I find that there's these very progressive persons who tend to find an issue with everything, and then it's this kind of we're having this issue we're having this issue where sorry about that, we're having this issue where we all label as one, so all liberals are then seen as bad persons, because this progressive nature that we're just give me one moment. But yeah, just sum it all up, I was really agree with Savannah on the point though.
all right. Thank you for that. Jumping right ahead. With all of this in mind, what do you believe can be done to decrease or eradicate both these issues? And this is the last question. Can we hear from Jovain?
Could you please repeat? I didn't hear you well.
What do you believe can be done to decrease or eradicate male victimization?
Oh, in my opinion, I think the first thing is to realize that it does exist. That we don't think that only women can get abused. So it's most important to start a conversation around it. Um, but first off, recognizing that, as Gio rightly alluded to, that stop victimizing ourselves. That's why even in my presentation, I made sure to mention more than once that females get abused more, because the main focus should be on eradicating gender-based violence in terms of females first, because it's happening a lot more and it's what's propagated in society. But in terms of males, it's something that we need to recognize that it does exist, and we need to start a conversation in how we can stop it, and that it does exist, and we shouldn't ridicule men that have been abused. We shouldn't treat legislative action that is brought forward about a male being abused as a joke, because a male can be abused. Case in point, Johnny Depp and Amber Heard. When I guess that advocate.
Savannah?
All right, so what we can do, this is a pretty loaded question. Issues like these, to be completely honest, they're going to take a lot of time. Social change is something that is really difficult to get across to persons, especially something so deeply entrenched from, you know, a long time, like basically the beginning of time and so on. In terms of male victimization and stuff like that, I definitely feel like there needs to be more open, honest conversation about two sides to it. So the first side of it is I definitely feel like um in our law enforcement, in our society and so on, we need to encourage more males to come forward and express when they have been abused. I know that that's easier said than done, but it starts with encouraging transparency and honesty to let them know that this is a safe space and they can come forward when some certain things happen to them, because I just feel like they feel like a lot of persons might feel like it doesn't make sense because the law might not help them. I think Zandria raised that point earlier. They might be seen as a joke. So we need to first address that so they feel comfortable coming forward in the first place, because I'm not sure the young man who said he studies law, a lot of men, they don't even report it in the first place. So we need to get them to start feeling comfortable to report it. Another aspect of it is this blame game and being insensitive and towards other victims and saying, oh, I am a male and I get abused too, and so on and so forth. I think that we need to just be more sensitive to each other's issues. When I talk about each other, I mean male and female. Be more sensitive to each other's issues so that going forward we can approach abuse not on a male or female level, but just on a human level. Everybody gets abused. Everybody sometimes gets abused. We know that. We know that abuse is not a female issue. We know that it's not a male issue. You don't have to, keep reinforcing that. Yes, in certain aspects, females get abused more, but I just feel like we need to encourage each other to speak up more. Or law enforcement that definitely needs some type of resolve or solution, because the young man who pointed out that a man can't be raped by law or something to that extent, that was definitely something so alarming to me. So things like that, because even if they bring it up and the law isn't going to do anything about it, it just defeats the problem, and we just go in a one circle all over again.
Giovanni, do you have anything to say about this?
Repeat, Nicaro.
Does Gio have anything to say
Yeah.
about this?
Thanks, Nicaro. I I'm not going to stray too far from what Savannah and Javane have already said, because the purpose really aligns to what we need to do. There needs to be a reform of our social constructs. There needs to be a reform of how we think about life. Um, and I think the ethnomethodologies that we've ascribed, I think the societal normative that we've ascribed to for this subscribed to for this long period of time, they need to be addressed. And Savannah rightly said it: social problems aren't going to be fixed in a night or a day. They're not the easiest things to tackle. But here's what I say: a stone can create a stone can create a ripple in the lake, and give it some time, that ripple is going to become a wave, right? It starts with us as males and females. It starts as us as humans, as persons, to start recognizing these things. Look at ourselves, reflect, and see, how are we contributing to this negative narrative? How are we contributing to these bad things that, affect males, affect females, and just create this very dystopic arena for us? If you're adding to the conversation on Twitter or Facebook or Instagram about toxic masculinity, and you're purporting it, you're proposing toxic masculinity, look at yourself and say, no, I'm not going to say that a man is supposed to be 24-hour work so that he can provide and there's no consideration for his mental health. I'm not going to say that, hey, man not supposed to have emotions and stuff like that. Look at yourself, male and female. Let's stress it. Males and females, look at yourselves, see how you play into the stereotype, see how you play into the narrative, then break it down and start that reform.
Thank you very much, Giovanni. You raised some great points there. All of you raised some very great points. I just want to add that, there's something I've noticed that, that advertisement that's on TV about reporting domestic abuse. If you have noticed, I believe that majority of them, I don't remember, but I think there was one with a man, but majority of them show the female being the victims. But I believe that there should be something that says, anyone can be abused. It should just be that anyone can be abused, and you have female, male, and you just say report abuse. It should be that because um I think we're focusing too much on the abuse. Okay, I'm not going to say we're focusing too much, but we are not addressing abuse on males as much as it should be, and that needs to change. All right. So, this was a very lovely discussion. Was a very, very, very great discussion that we have this evening about many topics and issues and so on, and great points were raised. And I hope that everybody that is here this evening, you listen to the points and you take something from it and you think about it. And I hope that this discussion that we had here, that we're having here this evening, discussion that we had, I hope that it really helps persons to change their point of views on various stereotypes and so on, and change their behavior towards what men should be, what females should be. So before we came to this talk, before we started this live, we actually asked a few persons. We asked on WhatsApp and we asked on Instagram the question to persons: what do you believe that men want? So
All right.
we're just waiting for some of our comments. We're going to be displaying some of the comments for you here. All right.
Somebody said that
So
they want they want the ability to be who I am without discrimination. And that's about sexuality or anything. It's about being able to do something and people won't say you're a man, toughen up or something.
we love, affection, care, and lip nurturing. Tired of being the thug every day.
Somebody said they want love, money, and affection.
And another, a safe space to be able to express themselves, what men want, without being called safe, weak, and or homosexual. So freedom of expression and to be valued for more than just what they can offer: money, car, rides, houses, and a proper role model to help them break away from society's molds.
Someone said, I want Jamaican men to view women as more than something which should be possessed and to view them as our equals and not inferior to us. I want us as men to get rid of some of the toxic masculinity traits that have been evident within our society, thinking that it is unmasculine for men to show emotions or to struggle with mental health. Also, I want women to stop thinking of men as bank books.
Right. And the next person says, I guess to be able to be free to express my feelings without being marginalized. Men more often than not, men more often than not refrain from showing who they are by upholding a front. They screw and behave all bad manly. The truth is, most times they are the weakest fence you'll find behind closed doors. Bottom line, to be able to be a man without being dictated by society what a man is supposed to be.
Someone said they want appreciation, a shoulder to lean on, and I guess to feel valued. Someone else said to be loved for who they are and not their money.
And this comment is the same as before, so we can move on.
Yeah, someone said, oh, okay, well, I'd say we want to feel loved, appreciated. We want to feel safe where we can talk about our feelings or what's bothering us without being seen as weak or without whatever we said be used against us. We want peace of mind. There is sense where the attention we're given can be too overbearing at times. We'd like reassurance. I know women like I know women like those little paragraphs every now and then reassuring y'all how we feel about y'all. But although us men don't ask for it, we definitely love to be reassured as well.
Yes, that is a very strong point there. And another person says, emotionally, I think men want women to stop judging them because they have feelings as well. They are human beings. In the same way, women want love and all that, men want those too. General, men just want to be themselves without a need to apologize.
Have some more. Somebody said they want love, not only sexual affection. They want love, not only sexual affection or activity, but to be able to rely on someone when they are needed in the most crucial situations. And also understanding, meaning we do not have to say our problem directly, but we are able to connect naturally, knowing how the other feels about something that happened.
And another, all we need is love. There's nothing more powerful than spreading love and peace with everyone around us. I think society would definitely be better off if we just took the time to love each other.
We have a really long one here. Someone says, well, that's a tricky one. As a man, well, I don't want anything in particular as a man. Maybe guys understanding that they can cry or confide in people without feeling weak or emasculated. You don't need to be stronger than anyone or need to enjoy sports. Also, sometimes men just want to be left alone. Not everything likes contact or company. Not everyone likes contact or company. And just because a guy doesn't want to be around anyone or isn't interested in sex doesn't mean there's something wrong with him. Mostly I want changes in how people think about men and about men think they can be a man. I agree with this one. And I think the next one was ready already.
I want not to be judged for the action of other men. For example, father, brother, other men. Just because they do something doesn't mean that I'll do it too. Tired to be the continuous post about Tired to see the continuous post about men deserve nothing, etc.
Just want to be me without the stigma of what the typical man should be like and be able to show emotion without being deemed as weak. I want females to see me for me and not just a sexual object. I want love, not only oh, that was read already.
And
And we
our
have some
comments from
from Instagram.
to not be marginalized, a
A
stable
stable
job and a
job,
healthy relationship.
relationship. Men need an equating factor to the toxic male culture that is in our society. guidance, and support. Men need an equating factor, well, to be given the chance to prove we're not victims of our environment.
Yes, and these are some very wonderful comments that we've got, and there are things to think about. To see that a lot of these comments that we actually got, a lot of things that the panelists this evening, a lot of points that they actually brought up, and it goes to show, it goes to show that these issues are not just viewed as issues by a specific group of persons, but widely. And no, our faculty rep is in the building. Hi, Javon.
Hey, Celine, I've been on the outskirts of the conversation, watching on YouTube, watching on Zoom, just paying attention to the wise words, just paying attention to the wise words of the panelists. And I just want to say that this is a conversation that is supposed to be had, especially in these times when persons are raising their eyebrows on issues that weren't normally spoken about in the past. And it's very important for us to have forums like these to not only put out a post and say happy International Men's Day for some type of PR strategy. We're an organization, let's put out a happy International Men's Day. But it's important to carry on beyond the posting and have a forum where we can sensitize persons in our own little way. We have it for our faculty. We can just do that in our own little way in order to sensitize persons on some of the problems that our men are facing, such as quelling toxic masculinity, such as emotional health that most of us deem as not manly, physical health, as well as social health. And all of these problems are facing our men that overall in society it is not looked upon. So it's very important for me and the committee to have this type of forum, to have this type of conversation, that even though we don't have thousands of people, we're impacting the 50 or the 70 persons that tune in to this live, and I'm very happy for that. So thank you for the committee for putting this together. Thank you for the panelists. Like the panelists, they drop gems and nuggets that will last for a lifetime. Savannah, the men that were partnered with from Chancellor Giovanni as a first year, all of these conversations, I'm sure that many persons were impacted by them and they learned something new. They learned perspectives on different topics that some of us probably didn't have that type of perspective. So thank you for the panelists, and thank you for all the viewers. They're not physical, but thank you for all the viewers on YouTube and in the Zoom chat for asking your questions and just connecting with us on social media and answering our questions. So I'm not going to stay long because I know that we're gonna talk out. So once again, thank you.
All right. Thank you very much, Javon. And yes, indeed, this was really a necessary thing. But all good things must come to an end. We actually, we passed the time limit by enough. So we're not going to
Oh,
keep
no.
you any longer. I just want to thank my wonderful co-host, Nikara Cook, and the panelists, Joseph
It was a
Sangster
pleasure.
Smith, Thomas Grant, Giovanni Lewin, Javine Brown, Ronaldo Burke, Zandria Stennett, and Savannah McDonald. And thank you so much to all the persons who are here with us in the Zoom chat. And thank you so much for all of you viewers who tuned in to listen to us on YouTube. Thank you so much for being here. Thank you so much, everyone, for being a part of this. And, we've come to the end.
Yes, just a reminder to everybody on YouTube to subscribe to our channel. We have a lot of content coming for
Yes.
you next semester. Out for our Fortnite tournament next Saturday at 2 p.m. Um, you see CAC event planning seminar on December 5 at 6 p.m. You can follow us on our social media at UEMona_HumEdu for more. And you can look out for our next publication, the monthly bulletin HumEdu today, next week, Wednesday.
Yes.
Thank you for tuning in.
Hey, we got it going on. Hey, we got it going on. No separating me and my lady. Oh yeah. We firm as the rock of Gibraltar and mountains around Jerusalem. You labor in vain if you try to bring us pain, cause you'll never win. You cannot go around us. She said, us, nothing divides us. Now there's more than a million reasons to quit, but we'll never split. More than a million reasons to quit, but we're holding on. Love is what dreams are made of, and in my visions all I see is her. We got something strong.